Resident Evil is known for being one of, if not the most iconic survival horror franchises ever made, perfectly balancing horror, survival, action, and good old-fashioned campiness.
I've sent my right hand to dispose of you.
Your right hand comes off?
With the series having a fairly legendary run, not only creating Capcom fans, but also survival horror fans that would go on to create some of the most iconic franchises in the genre, such as my personal love, Dead Space. But all good things eventually come to an end or run out of juice, with the series slowly losing its identity, with the dividing RE5 moving towards a more obviously Japanese idea of what Western audiences think is cool, then into the Call of Duty inspired train wreck known as RE6 in 2013. Wait, that was 12 years ago, what the fuck? Leading to the franchise almost entirely falling off a cliff in terms of popularity, only really having a few titles that sold okay, such as RE Revelations 2, or the vomit-inducing Umbrella Corpse. I'm not kidding, by the way, this game is to date the only game to make me feel physically ill.
Shit! What the fuck? I can't. What the fuck? It's the fucking birds! Already fucking birds on it! Goddamn game! Fuck!
So after all the failures and bad attempts at trying to do everything while moving away from what made people love Resident Evil, Capcom instead focused on making Resident Evil 7 a tightly focused return to form, focused on real survival horror, creating probably the most scary Resident Evil game while also saving their franchise with one of my favorite survival horror games of all time. Before the release of RE9, which looks amazing, let's take another look at the game that saved Resident Evil, now that the franchise is finally returning to where it all began, in RE9. Resident Evil 7 stars you, Ethan Winters, a headless man looking for his girlfriend who's been missing for several years after going on a quote-unquote business trip, only to send a message to him years later a la Dead Space, asking for help.
Ethan, you were right. I did lie to you. I shouldn't have, but all I can say is that if you get this, stay away.
Leading him to the middle of nowhere, Louisiana, where he finds the Baker Estate, the house of horrors his girlfriend has been trapped in, now forcing him into a fight for survival against the psychotic mutated Baker family and the monsters they've created. An absolutely great premise that grounds this game into a much tighter, more personal and mysterious experience, similar to that of the original Resident Evil, with the Baker's house main area even being slightly reminiscent of the Spencer Mansion's main entrance. The game even starts somewhat similar to the original, with Ethan being forced to enter an extremely sketchy location while being watched from the shadows by the Baker family. Entering this absolutely decrepit house with strange rotting food, a grossly sticky fridge, rotting walls, and hints of what might happen in this area, with both news articles about missing people who went missing the same time as Mia, and the family pictures that seem almost normal despite the location. This intro doesn't immediately give you an action sequence like most of RE5 or 6. It also doesn't tell you what's going on, and you also don't have the expectation of Umbrella being here or doing something, making you really feel like you're here in the trenches, looking at things or trying to interact with stuff just because you need to know what the hell is going on. That is until you find your first videotape, a feature new to this game that I really like. Each videotape will show you a moment in time from the POV of another survivor. That more often than not is used to expand your knowledge of what happened here, but also to give you key information on how to progress the game, such as in this first one where we play as a camera crew and investigating the spooky Baker house for a crappy TV show, only for us to get systematically wiped out and stalked. Fun fact, this is actually how they first showed the game off, with this being the kitchen demo that was teased and spoken of being horrifying in VR. turned into an actual gameplay component that was used both as a public demo for RE7 and now an actual mechanic. It's worth noting you don't have to interact with these, and you can find what you need to progress if you just know, but realistically, this is just for the sake of replayability or if you get lucky while looking, with the only one that feels required being one where you're stuck in a saw-like trap that can only be completed upon after viewing it for the first time. Getting introduced to these really on is something I really wanted to talk about, because instead of getting intense combat early on or like an early zombie encounter, instead we get this really slow, well-paced, intense experience, giving you genuine horror, something you don't really see a lot in Resident Evil, as usually when you get to the main area or get to the first couple sections, you're given a weapon and forced to fight a couple of dudes. But here, it really sets the stage that this is gonna be something different you probably haven't played before, something that the Resident Evil community has been asking for a long time. But back to finding Mia. We do in fact find her in an absolutely not creepy room, with her having zero recollection of the year she's been gone, while being completely out of it, freaking out about, Daddy?
What's going on?
Daddy's coming. We need to go.
Daddy?
And the family, something that totally wouldn't be a red flag. So Ethan goes along, witnessing the horrors and disgusting fleshy masses that inhabit the family's basement, finding both a doll and a picture of an old lady, which, once again, not creepy. She then, of course, gets taken. Who would have expected that? The more unexpected thing is her acting insane after. Forcing Ethan to kill her until she gets back up. Several times, in fact, with the last time taking Ethan's hand with her. He would totally bleed out from this, by the way. If not by that, then maybe by the main man himself, Jack Baker, who takes us out, welcoming us to the family. This leads to Ethan waking up to a sight many of you have probably already seen.
Where am I? What the hell?
Rise and shine, sleepyhead. It's time for supper.
Who are all you people? Where's Mia?
Eat it. It's good.
Dumb some bitch wasn't no good if it hit him.
Yes.
Not again.
Get out the way, Marguerite. Hit boy's got to eat. He got to have his supper. Come here, boy. Let's do this.
Shit, oh shit, oh shit. He's not eating it, Jack. He's not eating it.
Get the hell up, Marguerite.
Made that for him.
Get the hell out of here.
You're a son of a bitch. Oh, I can't believe it. You son of a bitch. He's not eating it. He's not eating it.
This was supposed to be a very special feast. Come on, boy.
This scene is honestly unlike anything else in this franchise, just because how fucking weird it is. From the feast to the table, Marguerite being upset we don't want to join or eat the food, a grandma just kinda chilling there, to Lucas losing his arm again? This is just a level of absurdity we haven't really seen in Resident Evil to this point. Hell, it's not something you see in any franchise almost ever. I can't even think of one when writing this. Meaning, the game sets the stage immediately that this will be something unique. After this altercation, Ethan finally escapes. Well, kind of. He has nothing, besides the fact his hand has been luckily reattached, because it was stapled on. Yeah, don't question this. Ethan just loses his hand a lot in the games he's in. It's from this point we are first introduced to the Baker estate, with us being able to see the depravity and grossness going on here, with the kitchen close to us confirming this weird food we've been seeing grossed out by are in fact people. Because of course they'd be cannibals, after all, who isn't? Being in the house proper, we also see that it's more than just an abandoned house that's in disarray, with a large portion of this house boarded up, trapped, or straight up destroyed, with some of these things feeling like they're built just as much to keep someone out as it is to keep someone in. But Big Daddy isn't gonna let you just snoop around for escape freely, with him chasing you throughout your attempts at escaping, breaking furnitures, walls, and even himself just to get at you, taunting you the whole way in an absolutely insane and kinda funny ways. For example, Jack shocked me when I tried to run away, got caught, then put in what seemed like a death scene, only for Jack to cut my leg off, then give me a medkit to fix it, while taunting me the entire time.
House, boy! You can do it. Better now? What the fuck? He's got it.
Genuinely, this is one of the things that sold me on 7 all the years ago when I think I saw Angry Joe have this happen to him. When Jack chases you like this through the house, you really feel desperate, as at this moment, you really have nothing, with you being forced to just juke him as best you can while solving the puzzles to progress, making you play most of the game like a horror protag who doesn't want to draw too much attention to yourself so you don't get caught. Not an easy task, since this family seems to have completely ridiculous abilities they use to keep you on your feet, such as Jack's immense strength he used to tear down walls or the family dinner table. Marguerite's gross bug form and themed sections puts you in a pseudo-stealth area that, if caught, sends a horde of bugs that she's placed in nests you have to overcome to move along. And most odd are Lucas's saw-like traps and mechanisms that make you even doubt if you can trust item crates anymore, tricking me on several occasions, ending some challenge runs. The pure level of personality in each of the family members makes this game worth experiencing alone, as every section feels like it's part of a coherent experience while still being unique, unlike some of the other Resident Evil bosses that, while I like Resident Evil, some of them kind of feel like footnotes. For example, I don't really remember the original Resident Evil Revelations enemy, the guy from RE0, or what was really going on in Resident Evil 6. Because while the big gooey monsters are kinda cool when they show up, and the transformation scenes are really gross, something I morbidly looked up when I was younger on YouTube, they don't really stay memorable outside of that, like their personalities or why they were doing things. Meanwhile, I've thought about RE7 for years and years and years, just because this game has such iconic things, even though I've never played it, like the previously mentioned Jack healing you or Lucas Absurd's traps. This is certainly helped by the fact that Baker Estate is ginormous, making me wonder how they even got this house. It's also genuinely interesting to progress in, with the now typical chase mechanic of Jack, which was likely made because of Jack's success or another family member, but also just some great environmental storytelling and puzzles, like discovering that Lucas might be more than he seems, that the family might have in fact been resisting the control of whatever has them, and what happened to all of those missing people. This game has some of my favorite puzzles or interactive things, like the shotgun in the main hall, which of course on first sight would make you excited to go grab it ASAP, but once you get it, you're locked in, making you want to go find whatever you need to get that shotgun out of its cage. And it feels great when you do it, with it feeling like one of the strongest shotguns in the franchise, even if it really isn't. The estate is also just honestly beautiful, with a lot of really good sights to look at, even if it's kinda gross, with it feeling genuinely really authentic, like this place was once lived in and declined over time, Like, the developers really cared about making the Baker Estate a memorable place. I will say, however, if there's one complaint I have with the Baker Estate, is that it does feel more gamey than the usual Resident Evil locations. Don't get me wrong, every location has that weird gamey feel of why the hell is this here, like on Revelation's weirdly designed cruise liners, Raccoon City's police stations, or even the original Spencer Mansion's odd puzzles, but at least in those cases they make some sort of odd sense. Usually there was something to hide, so the creator had the location made it this way. But on the Baker's Estate, most of the locations here don't really make sense on why they are the way they are. Some things are fine, like the weirdly constructed trapdoors or electronic codes that were obviously created by Lucas and his weird designs, that all revolve around this technical skill. The normal parts of the house that feel like they would be here, such as a games room, living room, or even just the bathrooms, feel pretty authentic and nice that they're here. Or the almost broken parts of the house that have psychotic writing, almost like the Baker family was fighting to resist what was happening to them. But the shadow puzzles, the heads, and the weird keys we usually see in every game kinda don't. Why would a normal family have this level of security and weirdness to their house? Wouldn't it just get annoying to deal with this locale you've created? Especially considering there's a mine connected to the bottom of the house that seemingly only Lucas knew about, even though there's like one door blocking the entrance to it in the guest house. Truth be told, this is a total nitpick and doesn't really affect my love of this game, especially since I've played so many survival horror games on top of Resident Evil. I've kind of just accepted this is how these worlds work, since for the most part, these are meant to make you think, but also build tension when surrounded by enemies while low on ammo. On the topic of another nitpick, one big one I have with RE7 is sadly probably because how tight the Baker house is, which really works for aesthetic and encounters. Ethan has a really annoying run speed, probably the slowest ever of all time, with him more often than not frustrating me because he's just so damn slow, getting hit by things I'd expect to be able to outrun. Meaning, eventually you have to stop running away from Jack or doing your puzzle to stand your ground and turn this horror experience into survival horror, once Ethan finds his God-given right. To be honest, combat in this game is just kind of okay in my opinion for a couple of reasons. You have a pretty decent weapon selection here, with the standard Resident Evil options, like a really good feeling shotgun, the good old handgun which serves as the game's workhorse, and later on the more niche or powerful weapons such as the flamethrower, grenade launcher, or the amazing 44 Magnum. Great for taking the head off of anything you really just don't like, assuming you don't gear fear and keep the ammo to the last boss, like I tend to do in every horror game. Some of these weapons even have upgrades or alternatives you can find via hidden items, such as the double barrel shotgun or the 1911, which proves that it will in fact be in every single game. Alternate ammo types give you a few options as well, but are really for only two guns. Those being the handgun, which ammo is just stronger, or poison rounds for the grenade launcher that just felt alright. The enemies are also something I'd describe as just alright. Don't get me wrong, the Baker family are all amazing bosses with relatively unique mechanics, even if they are a little spongy. But the regular fodder you will fight along the way are extremely boring, with enemies consisting of gooey monster, floor gooey monster, big gooey monster, and bigger gooey monster. These are all the Baker's family victims after they've been infected with the mold, and they all basically fight the exact same way. Keep the distance, and lead them till you eventually take them down, or avoid them to save ammo. The only one that really feels unique is the fat one that vomits all over the place, then explodes when getting killed. But even then, they go down fairly quickly if you gear fear like me. It is worth noting, while it is annoying, this is mostly likely because of budget cuts. I have heard and have read that this game had a lot of budget cuts and kind of needed to get pushed out because it was spending a lot of money. So for what it is, this is actually alright and more of a nitpick once again, but I always like to have enemy variety in my video games. For instance, I love Alan Wake 1 and 2, but fighting the same 2 or 3 enemies gets kinda boring over a pretty long game. I'm also not sure if it's because of the difficulty, but this was actually fairly easy, with me having a ton of ammo almost all of the time. It could be a result of the game's crafting system and enemy damage being fairly generous in terms of supplies and damage, but it definitely felt a little easy. Surprisingly, this is the first Resident Evil game where I'd say the game's bosses are generally a better experience than the standard enemies themselves, since getting small groups of junk enemies combined with a specific family member stalking in areas, unique encounters, make a great experience as a whole, opposed to the norm where bosses feel explicitly separate, like in Resident Evil 3 or Resident Evil 4. This is not a bad thing, mind you. I actually think the bosses in those games are really good. I just think it works best here, even if the enemies are generally the weak point of the game. Another weird point about this game I do have to note is that RE7 is from Sony's PS4 era, where they really focused on PSVR, meaning this game was in fact designed with VR as a huge selling point. You can in fact play this game without VR like I did, but some things do feel a little strange as a result of being made with it in mind. Or at least that's how it felt to me. For example, out of the box, the FOV is aggressively bad. Combined with Ethan's weirdly low movement speed, it made me feel a tad sick, forcing me to change it. I could also just be spoiled by PC, but you know. Items are also hidden really well in this game, like aggressively so, forcing me to use an item called psychostimulants to even find a few. It's entirely possible this is just a skill issue, but knowing this was made with VR in mind, it definitely feels like some are hidden with the idea you can and will move your head around in this space to look around the crevices or spots out of the way. This is kind of annoying with the game's coin system, which has the Magnum, but also health upgrades, since without an item that reveals stuff, some things feel impossible to find otherwise. The game itself also looks a little low res in some situations, which is probably a result of VR, and as someone who's looked at the VR gameplay, it definitely looks really low res there, but luckily the resolution doesn't suffer too hard from it. Aiming with guns also probably looks the way it does because of VR, with you not looking down the sights, and more looking at where you're going to shoot, like a Hunt Showdown or Fallout 3. I honestly used to hate this, but have come around to like it, especially how in gameplay lets you visually see the enemies you're shooting at a little more, while making Ethan feel like he doesn't use guns too much. Meanwhile, on the flip side, if you do play with VR, I can see this being really cool. So many set pieces in this game look like they would be terrifying or exhilarating in VR, just like they were on my screen in first person. Like this one where you squeeze through a gap, only for a ton of bugs to get on you.
Yeah, I know how you feel. Oh my god, they're fucking everywhere. I hate these things.
This is like the part we want us to do in VR.
Go, keep going. They're fucking falling everywhere. How do you speed through? Oh my god, this feels fucking weird. No!
Or in some of the DLCs where you're strapped to a table. It really is a strong point of RE7. I don't feel like a whole lot of people talk about nowadays. Although, to be fair, it's for a good reason. Most people don't have a VR, especially now that it feels like the VR experiment during the PS4 to early PS5 areas did kinda die out. All of this alone is reason to play RE7, sometimes even more so than any of the other Resident Evil games. Like this experience, this vibe, this design, is not something you really see in the franchise, and it's really easy to see how going from punching boulders and stopping the violence
All this violence.
We need to stop the violence! We need to stop the violence!
to, well, this horror experience that isn't too scary was a fantastic choice that arguably saved Resident Evil. Even if the game isn't what I would personally describe as scary, this is still the only Resident Evil game to get a scare out of me rather than just make me feel stressed or grossed out. It's honestly amazing that the guy who headed Resident Evil 6, the comically bad stinker, is actually the guy who headed this as a response to Resident Evil not being scary anymore. Just amazing. TLDR, RE7 is amazing, and if you haven't, please play it. And if you haven't played Resident Evil in general, you can start with RE7. All of it's good, and RE9 is right around the corner. And speaking of getting to RE9, let's cover this game's pretty good, but honestly simple story that manages to connect the franchise as a whole in a really good way, while still feeling like this is a new Resident Evil with a new cast. If you don't want to hear the story, I talk about the DLC in a later chapter you can go to here. It's kinda spoilery all around, so it's after all the story stuff. After we escape Jack for the first time, we are called by Zoe Baker, the seemingly only sane member of the family. Zoe informs Ethan if he wants to live, he must first get out of the main house, then head to the courtyard. An easier said than done task since we gotta get into the garage first. Something a police officer helps Ethan with. Granted, Ethan asked for a gun, but no cop is going to do that, instead giving him the knife he needs for the lovely yellow tape. Japanese developers are certainly giving a little bit too much credit to cops in America, but you know, unfortunately, the cop gets murked before our first fight with Jack. One of the goofiest fights in the franchise, and a really fun one, with you fighting in the garage with your new handgun and a car. So the obvious solution is to find some keys and run him the hell down, where Jack tries to take control.
Let's finish this, you and I. Oh yeah, I'm gonna take you for a ride. No, 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 no!
Getting himself killed along the ride. At least you think so, till he revives himself and kills himself to show Ethan something.
Do I have your attention, boy? You're about to see something wonderful. Oh, fuck!
Fun fact, if you don't figure out how to get in the car, Jack will do it instead, putting you on the other side of the car ramming, which is honestly pretty awesome. Getting out of here, we find that the house is in fact fucking huge, with 4 main areas. The main house, which we just escaped from, the greenhouse, the guest house where the intro is, an old house, a boathouse, and a family barn. Yeah, this family inherited some wealth, that's for sure. Then again, this is in fact Louisiana in 2017. This could have actually cost $20, but you never know. Throughout all of these locations, we can see signs of a few things. One is that this mold is everywhere, but located in a few central areas like the basement and, for some reason, all the bathrooms, meaning it's probably in their water. The second is that the old woman we've been seeing seems to be almost watching us. Something Ethan weirdly doesn't remotely take notice or care of, or even the family themselves. A fact that's doubly weird given that there might be another member besides the old woman as well, implied by this photo of a child known as Evelyn. The third and most interesting is that this family was in fact normal at some point. Or they seem to be at least, with the catalyst to everything happening being around the time Mia disappeared, with a storm that caused the ship to have crashed somewhere in the bayou. This also coincides with people going missing, after which we find information that the police are getting close to figuring out what's happening. Something not shocking given that a cop was here and seemed somewhat familiar with the Bakers. Unfortunately, most of the people brought here were in Ethan's exact situation. Except, unlike Ethan, most failed to escape, instead being captured and then succumbing to the mold, whether it was given to them or another reason. With the mold itself being called her gift, that turned people into these gooey monsters, while seemingly giving the family all their powers. Powers that we get to see more of when reaching the final doghead, with the now living Jack interrupting us, challenging us to a whole-ass chainsaw fight against scissor blades. This whole fight to me feels like a mix of Silent Hill and The Evil Within, with its just absurd weapons and situation. During this fight, we see this strange regenerative ability typical of RE villains, the gift that was given to him and his family. The only complaint here is I do find it odd that the gifts are from this black mold, but when regenerating, it's just kind of fleshy masses. I kinda wish it gave off more of that moldy look like it does in some scenes later on in 7 or even 8. Getting the last key after allegedly killing Jack for realsies this time, we reach the courtyard. Finally getting to talk to Zoe again in her trailer that we could get a glimpse of earlier with Marguerite walking by. Don't try to shoot her, by the way, I tried.
Don't care.
Zoe gives Ethan his real task outside of just escaping with his life. Find the items necessary to manufacture a cure for Mia and Zoe so that they don't turn into what the family has so far. Zoe has one part, but the other 2 are with Marguerite hidden somewhere in the family's old house. Before Ethan heads out, he also kinda creeps on Zoe, looking at some of her private messages where she seems to be barely holding on, her fridge, and her underwear. Yeah. If you don't like bugs, you'll hate this next section, as the old house under Marguerite's control is filled with the bugs produced via her powers, with them serving as a bit of a roadblock until you find the flamethrower, which was hinted at during Mia's second Via gist tape. Regardless of them, you will have to evade Marguerite as she roams the halls, just like Jack, but in this case she has a lantern. Except Jack is kinda good at spotting you, while she's a little dumb, often not noticing you right in front of or next to her. This is likely a result of the fact the old house is even tighter than the main one. The only things to really note about this house is that it seems like warnings or destroyed areas of the house were caused by the infected family themselves, almost like warnings for each other or insane ramblings. They could also have just been left by the survivors who didn't last that long. Kinda like Mia, who seems to be alive, but not so well, with her memory being a complete mess. We don't even get to chat long as Lucas creeps around her to kidnap her, with us being left to wonder, what the hell is in this house? We get our answer after this honestly kinda dogshit fight where you just kinda sit in this pit, block, and shoot until she falls down. Yeah, it's kinda lame, but after this we could take the key and unlock a door that gets us the first item, seemingly unlocked by the watch that Jack gave us, revealing this fetus thing that we need to extract fluid from. It's in this room that we see that the family that's infected sees things differently, almost like they're in a haze, probably not realizing what exactly is going on. Unfortunately, the next part we need is upstairs, which is locked by a lantern, the one the mom had and fell down with into the pit. We actually see her take it back after turning into this.
What the fuck? Well, that's special.
On a side note, I love how Ethan reacts to everything in this game, with just a mix of fear and also a vibe of being sick of everything, which, to be honest, makes some sort of sense. These type of monsters are actually common knowledge in the Resident Evil world, especially after the events of 6. Getting stuck in a bioweapon situation in this world isn't really uncommon or not known of. It's something that happens from time to time, which is crazy to think of, but it kind of does. So it's kind of neat seeing someone who's not really involved in that world now getting involved and just being not really wanting to be here. But getting back to Marguerite, we are forced to fight her in the greenhouse, in what I would describe as easily the second worst fight in the game. She's a little quick, dumb, and has a ton of health, only really causing problems for me because I thought the game was bugged or something, pun intended, because the fight just would not end. In reality, she just does have a really big health bar and a very specific damage phase where she's weak, but it's honestly not a really great experience, at least to get the lantern from her though, which we immediately use to figure out what exactly is on the second floor of the old house. And it's shockingly a children's play space or rooms, with us being in some really spooky shit. Dolls in odd places, the rocking chair moving on its own, a child's drawing depicting a family, a shipwreck, and mold? Then a little girl cutting out the lights telling us we shouldn't be here.
Stay away.
With notes left saying this girl is named Eve, and something is clearly wrong with her. Eventually, Ethan finds an extremely difficult puzzle. What is this exactly? It can't be a puzzle, right? No, my fucking... That's a puzzle? Okay. Which the last item lies behind. A child. Well, a very long dead one. And unfortunately for her, we need her arm for the serum, with us taking it out in this really gross scene, making you feel like this isn't a human body. Then, when trying to escape, Ethan is ambushed, not only by the moldy boys, but the room itself changing, becoming more corrupted, and changed just like something you'd see in Silent Hill, making his escape even more urgent. But when getting back to Zoe's trailer, she's not there, with her and Mia being held hostage by Lucas, with him at least giving us Zoe's part of the serum, while egging Ethan on, forcing us to find and deal with him. But of course, we need to get the last two keys in the house for a door. Lucas up to this point hadn't really appeared much, but is by far the most interesting character in this game, with us being able to learn more about him throughout this final section in the main house that has been taken over more and more of by the mold as the game has gone on. With us learning from his childhood room that he might have always been a little sick, and that his disgusting creations have always been something he's kinda good at, with him winning several awards for academic excellence in robotics and engineering, while simultaneously torturing the kids around him, even trapping one in the attic until they died. And keep in mind, this is when he was a kid, far from whatever happened to the family here, making you question if what he is now is a result of the mold at all, or just how he's always been now enhanced by it. A videotape showing the cameraman Clancy from the intro's fate gives us some more insight as to what might be ahead of us once we confront him, specifically this birthday game of his.
You, my friend, you are one lucky son of a bitch. You know, I actually envy you. What? You don't believe me? This toy? Well, you can't fake this. It has taken me weeks to finish this, and it is finally ready. And it's all for you. Oh, come on now. Don't be like that. It's gonna be fun. Just you wait.
It's a saw trap, where one must place the final candle on the cake while it's lit. A bit of a task, given that this whole puzzle revolves around turning off the water supply here, so that you can get that flame, so you can get the lit candle through. But this game is actually rigged, with Clancy getting injured along the way, then killed by the trap itself, with no real chance of escape. Something you will have to note. It's at this point we see Lucas is in fact a tad crazy, but a little bit more put together than Jack or Marguerite, still harming himself to show us her gifts, now confirmed as Evelyn, which apparently he can see.
No, Ethan, that ain't special. This right here is special. You see, Ethan, not everybody wants to turn back the clock. What? What, Evelyn? I'm just trying to show him. Not everybody wants to go back to how things were. So he's a stupid bitch. She doesn't understand that I don't want to go back to how things were before my father found y'all. Not everybody wants to turn back the clock.
But going on, this section serves as a bit of the trapped combat section, with relatively high enemy density and a shit ton of traps, like the trick crates or tripwires. After defeating every enemy, we find Clancy's charred corpse, but also the code into the room we need to get into. Specifically, it's the room where Clancy died in this videotape, meaning you have to use the knowledge from that tape to actually get out of here and avoid the death sentence. So, we gotta cheat. In Clancy's route, he talks to this weird mannequin thing, which writes on his arm, while giving us something that would result in this bucket of oil leaking, causing the room to explode in flames. So we don't do that, instead cheating with the knowledges of the exact codes and where things are, allowing Ethan to complete the puzzle without anything left to explode and burn you to death. Something Lucas is not remotely happy about. Dropping a bomb in the room, which you of course can use to escape. If you don't do the tape, this is quite literally impossible on your first try, but you might eventually brute force it, making this the only tape that is kind of required, and I did see a few people complaining because they missed or didn't do this tape, which is a bit of a skill issue in my opinion, and I love things in this genre that is a hard knowledge gap that feels rewarding when you realize you have the information to clear the challenge, either by seeking it out on purpose or just finding it by accident. After this, we get the last piece of the puzzle and see where Mia and Zoe are held, with Zoe taking the items she needs to make the serum, weirdly giving it to Ethan instead of just taking it now. Of course, this gives time for Ethan to be interrupted once again by Jack for one last fight. A more typical Resident Evil fight versus a giant monster with glowy weak points. Honestly, something I don't really care for since they do it so much in Resident Evil, but I do kind of like it here, given it's few and far between in this game. The only thing that kind of sucks about this fight is he has this like tail thing where one of the glowy spots are and it's right on the floor, meaning I thought this was straight up bugged and I couldn't figure out how to kill him for a bit just because I couldn't physically see this for much of the fight, besides being in a very specific situation. Unfortunately though, in order to kill him, we have to use one of the 2 serums we made, meaning we gotta use the last one on the person of our choice. If used on Mia, it leads to a normal ending, with Zoe being pissed at us after we leave with Mia. The opposite happens if we choose Zoe, but instead, Zoe's killed on the boat after we leave, due to the serum actually being a suppressor and not a cure, meaning Evelyn is still entirely in control, enough to kill her, despite letting her be for most of the time she has so far. It's also worth noting Mia's ending is canon, so I'll mostly be sticking with that one since this is pretty much the extent of the choice's reach outside the ending scroll. Unfortunately, this next part of the game has the most backstory and real info on what Evelyn is and who caused RE7, while sadly being widely considered the weakest part of the game, Mia's boat and flashback. It's here we play as Mia instead of Ethan, forced to explore the shipwreck that was implied to exist here throughout the game, now full of mold and falling apart. It's here that Evelyn is seen in Mia's flashback killing the crew, but also seen and directly spoken to, showing just a little girl, a cruel one that wants Mia to remember what happened. Extremely upset they aren't a family yet. It's in the tape that Evelyn gives us, where we see what really happened all those years ago.
Alan, you're getting worse.
She must have infected me during the attack. And I'm too far gone anyway. But it serves me right. It's my fault she got out.
Yeah, it is your fault. But that doesn't mean I'm gonna let you die.
She didn't attack you?
It's part of her imprinting protocol. I can't believe this is happening.
Here. Take it. It has her tissue samples. You find her. You fix this.
Mia was working for a corporation known as the Connections, a corporation of sorts that seems to manage the bioweapons world more like a mafia than Tricell or Umbrella, which are just corporations. But in this case, they weren't trying to do anything insane with Evelyn, just moving her from one location to another while monitoring her allegedly unstable mental and genome. However, Evelyn is incredibly unstable and obsessed with the idea of having a family. The only problem, her tube baby upbringing and mindset led to an incredibly spoiled child that thinks she's entitled to the idea of a family, making her obsessed enough to crack under pressure of the move, resulting in her killing or infecting the entire crew after her second handler caused her to go ballistic, necessitating Mia to attempt to capture or kill her, while Evelyn constantly complains that she wants to just leave the lab and be a family with Mia as the mom. Unfortunately, part of her bioweaponness is she vomits this mold everywhere on top of manually infecting people, resulting in her completely infecting the crew, including Mia's partner, who she kills in a fit of rage, then disappears, infecting Mia before she goes, allowing her just a moment to send Ethan the video we see in the intro a la Dead Space, with it even being different than what we remember.
Ethan. You were right. I did lie to you. I shouldn't have. All I can say is that if you get this, stay away. Forget that you ever knew me. Have a good life.
This is never addressed, by the way. Then finally the ship crashes, ending up in the bayou before eventually causing the events of Resident Evil 7. But before we get back to that, Mia finally tells Evelyn they can't be a family, going off to rescue Ethan in an okay-ish combat section where you just need to reach the bottom. The best part here is honestly the fact you get remote bombs, which are just insanely powerful, taking out whole groups of enemies with just one explosive. When finally reaching Ethan, we are swapped back to his POV, with him seeing Jack and Zoe, but weirdly no Marguerite, in this mindscape-like area where seemingly people infected can talk to each other. It's here Jack explains that he tried to save Evelyn and Mia when the crash happened, but Evelyn infected them as a reward for their kindness, giving them their gift, the mold, forcing them to do what she wanted while twisting them into horrible people. telling us his family isn't really like this. They wouldn't just kill people. Maybe for his sake, it's better he doesn't know how Lucas is. It's kind of tragic that even though we can all see Jack was probably a really good person, given he feels some sort of empathy for Evelyn still despite everything, saying she just wanted a family. Ethan promises at this point to deal with Evelyn and set his family free. But as he wakes up to Mia freeing us, she loses herself to the mold, forcing Ethan away, telling her to...
Now go kill that little bitch.
By the way, if Mia wasn't given the suppressor, you kill her here in the fight. Getting off the ship, we find the last area, the mine with a helicopter flying over. Reaching the top of the abandoned mine, we hear from a seemingly recently placed radio that the helicopter is a team led by a familiar voice.
A thorough search of the Baker property revealed 0 survivors. Repeat, 0 survivors. We did find evidence of a skirmish. Evelyn? Negative. However, we did find several encrypted messages from the Baker's son Lucas to an unknown third party. You can probably guess who that was.
That's just great. We've had reports he's in the abandoned mine south of the property. I'm gonna go have a look.
Specifically looking for any survivors, and most important to them, Lucas, who was apparently contacting someone on the outside. It's also worth noting at this point we have no idea what happened to him, with our only choice to just enter the mine, an area that is pretty much just a combat test, with tons of enemies all the time. Most interesting is towards the bottom, where there seems to be a lab that was manned by Lucas, who was in fact actually fine this whole time, simply faking it because the connections found them and gave him a suppressor, making Evelyn think she's still in control while she's been getting seemingly older. We also learn here exactly what's been happening. The connections was developing this mold as a bioweapon, one based more so on mind control than anything else, with the lab here monitoring how people became infected. They made this mold through 2 babies across several generations. These were the weird corpse things we got the serum from, with the only success being Evelyn. The project was apparently so effective and so powerful that several different bioweapons manufacturers were on board, despite the fact that Evelyn was an extremely violent individual obsessed with family for unknown reasons. But with the crash, everything kinda fell apart, with the mold creatures she made, which are actually just big superorganisms of mold colonies infesting the area, while the serum itself revealed to be unable to actually cure people too far along, due to the fact their bodies are essentially replaced entirely by the mold. Meaning, the serum is more so of a disposal method at that one point, one we actually have to use against Evelyn herself, with us ending up back in the guest house where we entered from. Honestly, kinda shocking it was right here and Evelyn didn't know, but maybe she was really dumb, leading us to a scenario where we must chase Evelyn around till we find the real her to inject the serum on.
No! No, no, no!
You.
Why does everyone hate me?
Goodbye, Evelyn.
It hurts! It hurts! It hurts! Damn you! Damn you all to hell!
Revealing that she was actually the old lady that we've been seeing this whole time. And given all the hints about her aging and Evelyn not being okay, this clicks really well and makes a ton of sense. This is just a result of her not being able to control her advanced aging that wasn't treated due to her distance of the connections. She just couldn't maintain her own aging until she became so old, leading us to Ethan's final fight, against the giant head of Evelyn, where we must mag dump till she dies, with that same helicopter from earlier flying over us. Of course, when we do kill her, she isn't dead, for real, forcing us to use a weapon that the men on the helicopter gave us, allowing us that one final Resident Evil power weapon fight.
Playtime's over.
with us being greeted by a skinny Chris Redfield arriving to save the day. I'm honestly so happy he got off the roids and got healthy. But now he's working with Umbrella Corporation, a blue umbrella. For longtime fans, this was initially a big what the fuck, but it's later explained in the DLC. For now, it's time for Ethan and Mia to just go home, capping off the horrors of the Baker estate and the fantastic base game of Resident Evil 7. With a story, the story was short, it was simple, it didn't have a whole lot of connections to the wider franchise till the end, but it worked so well with the game edging you along, slowly revealing everything until it eventually clicks in your head. A pacing and level of patience I don't think I've seen this franchise do in a very long time, making this an amazing experience for newcomers and old fans alike, giving the newcomers something new to discover while kind of teasing the old fans the whole time along the way. It definitely makes sense how this game is saved for the franchise and is often considered one of the best Resident Evil stories. But this isn't the end, as Capcom later released the epilogue later as DLC, for free you should know, so if you get the game now on Super Sale you can still play the whole experience. After the events of the main story, Skinny Chris goes to tie up the loose end known as Lucas in the Not a Hero DLC, with Chris being sent to find Lucas and the missing teams that went to find him, only for Chris to land himself in the missing team's situation with a bomb strapped to its wrist.
We're both walking out of here.
I got news for you.
What?
That's not gonna happen. Oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Now, you can try and take that off all you want, but I'd advise against. My hand might slip and... Lucas! Oops.
It's worth noting, Chris is in fact BSAA here still, the organization that founded to fight bioterror after all of Umbrella's crap for those who don't know. They're the organization that Chris has been with for like ever at this point. They're being contracted via Blue Umbrella, the American branch of Umbrella that wasn't making weapons, allegedly, now turned into a force against bioterror. They now want the help stopping Lucas Baker, which of course Chris doesn't exactly trust throughout this entire mission, just enjoying their weapons. This is the Chris COD experience we usually see when he's the protagonist, with Chris getting heavy guns, actual scopes, and a heavy ass punch that feels really good to land. This DLC is relatively simple from this point, with us having to find each member of the team and the key items we need to progress, with the only real new enemy being these white gooey monsters who need to be hit with a specific attack before they're able to take any damage. It's at the end of this DLC, after Chris sadly loses the whole team that went missing, because apparently Capcom wants this guy to lose every single team in a horrific way after Raccoon City, he finally finds us some lore. Namely, that Lucas was in fact sane the whole time, like the end of RE7 was saying, working for the connections that gave him a suppressor while tasking him to study Evelyn and the effects of the mold on people, making a whole research lab in the mind for him, even giving Lucas a whole research team. Making me kind of wonder two things. One, how is a whole facility like this built here without Evelyn's knowledge? The second is, if Lucas was really fine the whole time, how much of his behavior is an act to trick Evelyn, and how much is based on the fact he was kind of insane when growing up and before infection? The major thing this facility shows us is that Lucas is in fact crazy without the mold, straight up torturing the victims and test subjects, which his staff didn't like. Despite, you know, doing Umbrella experiments, you don't really get to have an ethics moment when you're actively researching bioweapons like this on people, like come on man. Anyways, Lucas finds out and slaughters the team, planning to finish the job himself to send the data to the connections, which is where the Boulder Puncher comes in, chasing Lucas to the end of the lab, where he finally uses his powers, transforming into the Baker family's final boss, which of course I melted before Chris eloquently stops the data upload to the connections, actually capping off the story to RE7. RE7's base game is fantastic because of everything we talked about, but you know what's actually shockingly good? This game has a really good selection of DLC. First of all, let's separate the DLC into two camps: content that actually moves the story along and the fun stuff that kinda does. Starting with the fun stuff, we have a really good selection of Nightmare where you survive till noon, or as long as possible in the Baker family basement. Ethan Must Die, which is a soft roguelike single run where you have to deal with heavy difficulty to traverse the whole house to reach a boss. I actually kind of wish they did more of this mode because it's really cool. 21, which is more of Lucas's Saw Traps, where you play 21 against another victim. This one honestly made me wonder if Buckshot Roulette was inspired by this, by the way. We even have a puzzle escape where you gotta leave Marguerite's room where she takes care of you. Finally, we have Jack's birthday party, which is more of a fun challenge mode. Honestly, the part I love about this the most, besides the fact that they all play really well, is a large portion of them feature Clancy, the cameraman from the trailer and the beginning, as the protagonist. Genuinely making me annoyed he died, because he actually feels like a pretty good RE protag during these modes, making you want him to live. And on another note, I played the shit out of these, which is shocking, as I'm a person who never really played or liked the Mercenaries mode, which typically comes with every RE game. Mercenaries always felt tacked on to me, where these all felt really fun to play. I just wanted more and more of these, like the Basement. I played so much Nightmare game mode, it's not even funny. And getting to the DLC story, we have the mentioned Not a Hero, which as said before is a great serviceable epilogue to the game, letting you get that Resident Evil Chris COD experience. The more interesting ones, however, don't feature Chris or even Ethan, instead having Zoe as the protagonist or objective. In the Daughters DLC, we get another soft horror experience where we get to see what happened that night the ship with Mia and Evelyn came ashore. How Evelyn slowly infected everyone, causing absolute chaos as you see this genuinely kinda normal and kind family turn into these monsters, except Lucas. He always seemed crazy, but it's just less so here. It's even more tragic during the story when you get another reason to hate Evelyn. The family was probably going to adopt or take care of Evelyn for as long as she needed, but Evelyn's self-loathing and horrible nature caused her to take the route of just infecting everyone, genuinely ruining her one chance at a normal life. Assuming she didn't get delivered to Miranda in RE8, but still. This DLC ends with the family fully infected and seeing what looks like normal while Evelyn's under control. But for whatever reason, Zoe is just left less so infected, resulting in where we find her when we arrive, running from her family while remaining to try and find the cure that she found information on when she found Mia. The next DLC involving Zoe actually skips quite a bit ahead to after Not a Hero, with Zoe now turned into this crystal thing as the virus gets worse and worse. But you aren't playing as Zoe. Instead, you play as the family's uncle, Joe Baker, who came to investigate, only to see BSAA agents over Zoe, which of course causes him to punch them out, because no one in the South trusts the government, even in cases like these where these guys were genuinely trying to help her while being kind, resulting in Joe having to go over the entire swamp in order to find said cure. Joe uniquely asks you the question in this DLC of, have you ever wanted to play a strength build in a Resident Evil game? Then I kid you not, punches his way through this entire game, with a devastating left and right hooks, throwing spears and crushing skulls. This mode actually plays nothing like any other Resident Evil. It's both strange and hilarious for you to just be so, for melee for once to be so useful in Resident Evil, and I love it. This mode is both good for a good laugh, but also as a good send-off to RE7 and Zoe, with you getting to fight Jack one last time with the power fist of all things, then learn that Ethan did in fact keep his promise, sending the BSAA to look for and save Zoe. Although, because of Joe, he was the one to save her, but was also the one to cause this whole incident, so, you know. All that matters is Ethan truly is the GOAT, and genuinely worthy of being the new RE protagonist he was always meant to be. Resident Evil 7 is an absolute must-play for every survival horror fan if you haven't yet. With its tight vision, amazing atmosphere, and genuinely great story, it's an amazing game all around. And now is actually a really good time to play Resident Evil in general, as the big RE9 is right around the corner, and it's looking fantastic, seemingly returning back to a more horror-focused experience like 7. I genuinely can't wait. So I'll actually use this segment to say, I'm gonna be playing a lot more Resident Evil, specifically RE8 after this to round out Ethan's story, then maybe take a look at Capcom's history of Resident Evil remakes if I feel up to the task. But thank you if you are still watching, and I hope you have a good day or night wherever you are.